So number one is this is a decision you're going to make before you build your deck. But I think the decision to upgrade to screw piles, helical screw piles, is worth the $1,000. And so this depends on the size of your deck. If this is a small deck, the average deck only uses 2, 3, maybe 4 piles. And so these screw piles in Canadian dollars are about $300 per piece. So if you need 3 of them, that's well within the $1,000. And that's not deducting the cost of whatever you were going to use. So the upgrade cost is going to be a lot less than that. But here's why I like these. So many places, such as Saskatchewan, where we are, don't require actual in-ground piles if your deck is under 6 feet. Some areas it's under 2 feet. Other jurisdictions that are more strict don't let you use anything but piles if it's going to be attached to the house. So you can't use the cottage blocks or the levelers, the grade slabs, whatever you want to talk about. But here, they're very, very common. And so if you've got a deck, average size deck that's got 3 piles or 3 slabs, whatever, you're spending, $20 or $30 on slabs and levelers. So you're spent, 3 of them is going to be $100 maybe. But to do screw piles is going to be under $1,000. So your net difference here is about a $900 upgrade Canadian, which is only $150 US, right? You didn't even crack a smile. You're like, that's legit. It's not, the exchange isn't quite that bad. But so, and this is probably arguably one of the most important upgrades that I have on this list, because many people would consider this not an upgrade. You should just be using this in the first place. But even over concrete piles in many areas, and again, this is regional specific, because in some areas it doesn't make sense to use screw piles. If you're in Washington or California, where your frost depth is 0 and you only need to do piles a foot into the ground, well, dig a hole and pour some concrete in it. There's little benefit to driving screw piles. So, but in areas that have deeper frost or have clay soil like we do, or not a lot of rock in the ground, so you're not going to run into any issues with that, screw piles over concrete every day, all day. So in our market specifically, you've got to go deep, because we have frost levels of 6 to 7 feet. And so in order to combat that, you've got to do a deep, deep hole. And that means you're pulling a lot of material out of the ground. And if you're in sandy soils, that might be okay, because you can, it'd take a lot of work, but you can shovel it. You're not shoveling the crap that comes out of the ground here. It's clay. It's like trying to ram a shovel into clay. So it's not shovelable. It's soaking wet, like dense clay. It's just, you can't really move it. You got to bring in machinery. So now you've got to deal with this, not only, so you've hired a machinery to dig the hole, to drill out the hole. Now you got to hire somebody again to haul away the dirt and pay to dispose the dirt that comes out of the hole. Because here, if you're going to do a proper concrete pile, it's like 14 feet deep. And so that's a ton of earth that's coming out of the ground that isn't shovelable, and you're paying somebody to remove that. Then you finally get to now you can actually pour the pile after all this work and mucking up your yard. You drop the sonotube in, you got everything lined up, and you call in the concrete truck. Okay, well, you're going to pay, like if you're going to call in a truck to pump concrete, you're probably for 3 piles going to pay a small batch fee. So you're going to overpay for what the concrete's worth, because you don't need that much. Or you're going to be doing it by the bag, hauling 50-pound bags of concrete. Well, it takes quite a few of those to fill a 10-foot deep hole or 14-foot deep hole or even a 4-foot deep hole. So it's a lot of work. There's a lot of work involved in that, and cost. And then you get the thing poured, and then you got to leave it for a day or two to let it cure up before you can build anything on it. And so now the cost is up there, the time is up there, the effort's up there, all of these things. And then it may or may not effectively battle frost. Depends on how you poured that thing or how deep you went, or sometimes they just don't work. And so it's a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and you're not guaranteed the results unless you really kind of overdo them. So helical screw piles. Let me tell you about this. We were out on site yesterday, Bryce, and this is probably the first time you saw those go in, I assume? Yeah. What'd you think? Quick? Easy? No mess. There you go. Like, those are the 3 things right there. We went in there. There's 4 piles on that deck. We got there. The pile guy was waiting for us. He got in his skid steer, drove it off his trailer. We marked out piles in 5 minutes. He drove them in a total of not more than 10 minutes, probably 15 minutes. Drove 4 piles, drove back on a trailer, pieced out. There was no mess. It displaces no dirt. He's in and out. Didn't wreck the lawn. No dirt to haul away. Drove them in minutes, and they were ready to build on the second he was done. Like you could start building on it before he had his skid steer loaded back up on the trailer. They're amazing, folks. And so in our market, they drive them 10 feet deep. That's to battle that frost. So they go in, it's a galvanized steel pipe. You can get different sizes of pipe, 2 3/8, 3.5, 4.5, whatever size of pipe you want to use for depending on the load of your deck. And then the plate at the bottom, the helix at the bottom, also different sizes, 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, 14-inch, 16-inch. You can go as big as you want. They are amazing. And in our environment here, where we have super deep frost and clay soils and no rock in the ground, they're just perfect. They're the perfect solution for here. That big plate torques up nice and tight. It won't sink because it requires so much torque to turn it to get it in. Once you get deep enough, it's torqued out to the point that it's not going to sink into the ground. It's not going to pull up because it acts as an anchor at the same time. So they're just amazing. And so is that a question that came through Instagram? Or is that just your question? Question from Bryce that some people are probably wondering, though, is will they work in rocky soil? So they can, however, a lot bigger struggle. But same idea. If you're going to drill a hole and fill it full of concrete, you're drilling a bit into the ground anyway. If you hit rocks, you have problems in both scenarios. But the cool thing about these is that if it's just a rock or like some obstruction, these guys can angle these things around. They can kind of drive these things directionally and kind of get around objects in the ground if it's not too big or in the way. But if you run into a very large object, either way, you're going to have a problem driving, either augering the hole for the concrete or driving the screw pile. So pretty minor step back. There's a whole lot of great things about helical screw piles. Big franchises, Post Tech, Techno Metal Post, Goliath. Those are probably the big three that I'm familiar with. There's a lot of them though. There's people out there everywhere doing these things for good reason. And not just for decks either. You can put people build houses on them, commercial projects. These guys are putting in 1,000 piles for solar farms. There's tons and tons of applications you can use these helical screw piles for. So they're great for decks, but they're also amazing for a ton of other things. Good in water. So that's a good question. I don't know the specifics about this. They do have stainless steel options, and I suspect you'd probably want to use that in water potentially. But I don't know why they wouldn't work in water. You'd have to drive them deeper, and that's the thing. You can drive them deeper. So the ones here are pre-cut to a 10-foot length, but you can put on 3-foot extensions and keep going as deep as you want. So I know that the guy we use most commonly has driven them 40 feet deep out here before. So throws a 10-foot extension on, drives it deeper, keeps going, and you just keep going until the engineer says, "Yep, that's the torque we wanted right there." Because you can keep going. If you hit like an aquifer or some sort of void in the soil, in the earth, whatever, you can just keep driving and going deeper. So anyway, they're amazing. So that's the number one. I think that's probably the longest one. I got really excited about that one. Number 2. Screw piles is the only one that I think that was really necessary that's a decision that has to be made before you build your deck, because unlikely you're going to put those in afterwards. However, it has been done. We have the pile guy has gone out and put screw piles under decks that didn't have proper piles before because somebody's planning to add a screen room or something, and he can get in there in many cases and have a solution to that. So pretty cool stuff.